Well, I'll be brief, and then obviously open it up for questions, is what you guys have. But this is all about a rivalry week and moving past. I'm sure you have questions. I don't have any updates on injuries of any sorts today as of yet, so there's not a whole lot there. But moving forward, this is about a rivalry week, and this is, what you love about college football. And there's no doubt that what happened last year is something that's fresh in the minds of everybody on this team and a part of this program. And so, we've got our work cut out for what we need to be able to do and learn from what happened last year and understand and recognize that this is what makes college football great. Your ability to have rivalry games, your ability to, play in rivalry games, and then, obviously to win rivalry games. That's what it's all about. So the focus is on that. The focus is moving forward. The focus is understanding and recognizing, obviously, what happened last year and what it is that we need to do to change all that happened last year. It'll be a physical, tough, hard-nosed game. Nothing different than what you would expect from an Iowa-Wisconsin football game. And I think it'll be exactly that. And now we got to get ourselves prepared for that. And we got to make sure that, Saturday night we're ready to roll.
Cool, you want to start?
Luke, you said no injuries or no injury updates, but did you see enough from Hunter that, let's say Billy can't go, that he would be the guy at quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would say. Again, there'll be a plan both ways. I think Danny had only 3 snaps in the game, but Hunter has done a good job. He will continue to get some more opportunities. Danny will have some opportunities as well, and we'll have to see how that goes. But I did. Even after watching it, I thought what we asked Hunter to do, he played with poise. He did the thing we asked him to do. He took care of the football, and for the most part, and so I think we can definitely build on that and build with him in different ways.
Luke, after the game, you kind of talked about the defense maybe wearing down a little bit, just because of the way the game went. After watching the tape, in what ways did that wear show, and how do you kind of address
it's more of a frustration. You can tell, some of the sound things you did in the first half, you became a little bit unsound of doing them in the second half. And that's just, I don't say that it's a physical fatigue. You played a lot of plays. The third quarter was a long quarter. It gets into some of that mental stuff. It gets into, hey, we got to go make a play here, and then put you out of position on some of the things that happened. And that's probably the only thing that I would say defensively is like, man, we got to come out that second half and make sure, that you're mentally ready to roll. And that's probably the one thing that was different from the first half to the second half. We didn't, again, there's mistakes all over. It's no different than any other game. The bigger mistakes in the second half, they were able to take advantage of. And that's what, was the difference, I'd say. And I call that fatigue. It's not he let down physically the guy. No, it's more of a mental fatigue that, hey, how did we not get lined up to this? How did we get misfit a little bit to this? How did we not play this the way we played it even in the first half? And so that's where I would say, hey, that's where we've got to continue to build and do a better job, defensively in particular.
You were mentioning Hunter playing with poise, but maybe what are some of the other kind of physical attributes that you like about Hunter that maybe you don't get with Danny, and how helpful was it in terms of him maybe not taking as many sacks? Yeah,
I think the nature of what Hunter does bring is he does have a quick release. He does have a bit of a stronger arm. I think he's got a really a good arm. And so I think there's some things that, suit to him and fit his style a little bit better. And I think those are some of the things you saw us try to do. Now we just got to be able to build off of that. But he is a well-rounded guy. I mean, it's not that he doesn't have some athleticism. It's not that he doesn't have the ability to run the football. As you get into some of these things, it's obviously it's a little bit tougher sometimes when you get limited in the number of quarterbacks you have, so you got to be careful in the situation that you put them into. And last week in particular, it was a very, very aggressive front. There was some really dynamic edges, so obviously he had us to prepare in our own way for that. But you just gotta kind of figure those things. And each and every week, what guys' strengths are. We're going to continue to build to those things. And now we got to ask him probably do a little bit more.
Luke, you talked about one of the challenges for the offensive line being not being able to practice together just because of your injury situations. Did you see what you wanted to see in terms of the 5 that played Saturday? And do you think those guys can at least be out there together this week?
What is that? Our 5th starting group up front, and I would hope that we can be very similar in that starting group. I mean, again, like I said, it's Monday. There is a growth, and there are definitely some things that you take good hard look at the first drive. There's always things you can do better, but that's a better depiction of some of the things that I think that we can do. And so, yes, I hope and I believe that's that combination of those guys getting a better feel together. Obviously, Davis doing a pretty good job. I'm not saying it was flawless by any means, but for a guy who's played his first game ever at center in his 5th year of college football, probably taken more than 2 snaps. It was the first time 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of things that we can build off of, and I think that's where we got to continue to go. And like I said, it's a Monday right now. Hopefully on Tuesday we'll have that group of 5 guys that are there together and able to work together. And with the right attitudes like they've had, they will continue to grow and get better. And we'll do things as we learn, as we go, that give us the best chance to have success, right? I mean, you can't, just do exactly what you want to do all the time. You got to do what your guys can do, both offensively and defensively. And I think that's where we have to do our job as coaches is, hey, let's give ourselves the best chance to be successful by asking guys to do things that we expect and know that they have a chance to be able to do, as opposed to asking them truly maybe to do something that is probably outside of their capabilities.
Luke, you said after the game that you're going to evaluate, every play and about the competitive spirit of everyone on the team. When you watched the film, what were your takeaways from that?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and divulge all the things I think. There's enough competitiveness, there's enough competitive spirit that it just has to continue to permeate throughout. And I think that's where, as you ask who's available to go, and what it really comes down to me is who has not say the willingness, because everybody wants to play, but who has what it is that you're looking for. And if that means we put some guys in some different spots and some different positions because, they have the competitive spirit and the competitive nature that give you the best chance to win on Saturday, that's what we've got to be able to do. Whether they're young or they're old. And I think that's where, you got to have to battle through some of those, young guy issues if they are the guys that have the most competitive spirit. We didn't get to see some of those guys, and that's from a game like that where I would say, man, I'd like to have seen a little bit more of, Mason Posa or Cooper Catalano or some of those guys that just to say, okay, let's really evaluate what your competitive spirit looks like, in those kinds of situations. And so we'll give some more opportunities, this week, obviously practice-wise, and go from there. But there's not a lack of it. I just think that they're the true highest of high ends competitors are the ones that show, especially into that 3rd quarter and 4th quarter, of what it is that you're looking for.
Luke, a lot of the offseason conditioning and training was focused on that Iowa game a year ago and the number 42. How much do you think all of that matters in this moment, or how much is about?
Well, I hope it matters. I mean, that's the whole idea of it. I mean, you can't dwell upon things. That's what you've heard me say it over and over. This competitive maturity really is. It's not accepting what happened last week, but it's moving on from what happened last week, right? It's recognizing what happened last year, but not dwelling upon what happened last year. I mean, it's like anything in studying history. Like if you don't make sure you understand and recognize it and learn from it, then you're condemned to repeat it, and that's what we can't have happen. So, yeah, I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to sometimes move on and to block out the noise, but what else can you do? And so that's the challenge that the guys have in front of them, and I think it helps that you have a rivalry week. It helps that you have done some things and talked about this that that they can recognize how important this is and not to dwell upon the things that happened 36 hours ago. So that's going to take some competitive maturity. I think we got what that takes. And again, as we get out there on Tuesday and Wednesday, you get a better feel for what that looks like and who those guys are that still have that distaste in their mind and in their heart and in their mouth.
Special teams is something that Iowa's always kind of known for, and Wetja and the returners, one of the best in the country right now. Just how do you have to deal with just their special teams units and then a great returner like that as a whole?
There's where that competitive spirit comes in. We pride ourselves on saying, hey, our best players are going to play on special teams, and this is what we have to be able to do. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge, I think, that's been greater than any one that we've had so far this year. I'm not saying that we haven't played against dynamic guys, right? I mean, Alabama had some dynamic speed and some returners and some things like that, but it's not just the returner. I think what they've done a phenomenal job and will continue to do a phenomenal job of is there's a competitive spirit. There's an effort level that I don't care who it is that goes on the field, right? I mean, whether it's the punt return team, the kickoff return team, the punt block, I mean, you can call them whatever you want to call them. You're going to be challenged, and it's not just schematically. I'm not saying they don't do a great job schematically, but you're going to be challenged on your ability to be physical, your ability to win one-on-one, and your ability to outplay them in every unit, especially the special teams.
As far as Matt Young goes, what has he given you these last 3.5 games?
Matt's getting better. I think that here's a guy that was thrust into into a situation that maybe you didn't envision. He was going to be a guy that, as we went through spring ball and fall camp, heck, he'd shown us a lot of things. It was probably in a backup role with maybe some situational opportunities, and he's been thrust into this role of starting and really kind of controlling a lot of things on the defense, because that's what Preston had been for us. He was more of the guy that was making a lot of those calls and a lot of those checks. And as Matt fills into that position, that's still a role that that position has to be able to do. So he's done a good job at it. He works his tail off at it. And he's the guy that you keep talking about, that I keep talking about, that you see the growth, whether, you missed a tackle last week and we didn't get the guy down on the touchdown, the slant by the wide receiver. But you see a growth every single day from Matt, because he is a competitive guy. He's got a mind for the game of football, and he has a passion for the game of football. And he's going to be better tomorrow than he was yesterday, and he's going to be better on Wednesday than he was on Tuesday. And that's what you love.
Coach, you mentioned after the game that it's difficult to continue to put together 12-play drives and win games without a big play. So how do you address that? Is it trying to take shots down the field to your playmakers, or more setting those up earlier in the drive?
It's a combination. We put ourselves in some tough positions, I think, early on in the year where you almost try too hard to create a big play, whether it's, some fancy shift or some different look up front. And I mean, offensively in some ways, to say, hey, let's hit a revert. There's a balance to what it is. We've got to make sure, we've got to find a way to get our backs to second level and give them the greatest opportunities to make some of those plays. It doesn't mean we don't have to stretch the field at some point in time. It doesn't mean we don't have to connect down the field. But sometimes you start stretching for those things, and it actually works against you. So I think that, us as coaches got to have a balance, and it's the same thing defensively. I mean, we've been decently sound in a lot of the things that we've done, but we also haven't created a lot of big plays. We haven't created the turnovers. The ball was on the ground 3 times this past week, which, is good, but all 3 of them, they recovered. Whether they made a great bounce or right back, it is what it is, right? You got to find a way to change that, and a lot of that has to do with effort and population to the football, as opposed to just thinking there's some special blitz or there's some special play. It's about, hey, look, we got to have some balance, but we got to find a way to get ourselves a second level. We got to find a way to put our guys in position that they do have to make some plays. There was probably a couple shots at coming down with the ball defensively last week that could have been differences in the momentum of a game. I'd say difference completely in the game. Some of them were early, but a difference in the momentum of the game that we've got to be able to execute with.
Luke, just more of a general overarching question. I know you can't talk about any commits right now, but just in this time of the season where, it's poaching season and, on every side, right? But just what are the challenges for your staff, for you, the assistants, the recruiting staff, and trying to maintain things, while also trying to have a team?
No, it's always been that way, right? I mean, the world isn't completely different. I mean, you never stop recruiting, you never stop building, you never stop looking at what the future is like. And, the easiest thing to do is to have success on the football field. There's no better way of recruiting. But the truth of the matter is you got to still continue to build the relationships. You got to recognize the things that are going to be the difference in getting guys, whether that's high school guys, whether that's eventually going to be transfer guys. And age, it is a little bit different. Not saying that the relationships don't still matter. It's not saying that you aren't still every week talking to guys and, several times. But you also got to recognize, like, look, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult if you aren't having success on the football field. They've got to be able to believe in what it is that you're doing and in the direction that which you're going. And so when they can't see it as well, you got to make sure that you can make them see it in a different way. And so when you don't win football games, it makes it a little bit more of a challenge. But I mean, it's always been that way, and I don't think it'll change.
Luke, another thing Iowa has traditionally done well is play sound defensively. They appear to have another good unit there, especially in run defense. From what you've seen from your group, what is your concern about being able to consistently establish the run when that has appeared to be a challenge through 5 games?
Yeah, it has. And it's still, a part of who we are and what we need to be able to do. And so we've got to be better than we were last Saturday, and we've got to be better than we were yesterday. And that's really what it is, right? Like we talked about, how do you create big plays? Well, it doesn't mean, they're good against the run, so we're not going to run the football. It means, guys, we got to put ourselves into positions where we feel like, it's the same thing they're going to do. Do we have advantageous blocks? Do we have angles? Can we run the football? We got to be smart about what it is that we're doing, but we also got to be able to ask our guys to be able to win at some of those points of attack. And so, that's a strength of theirs. It's going to be something that we're going to have to be challenged with. I think we've seen it, whether it was Alabama or whether we've seen it with Michigan. That front has been a strength of those guys that we played, and it's not going to be much different, on Saturday. But no matter what, we got to have some balance, and we got to be able to find ways. We have to be able to run the football, but we also have to be able to, get some balls down the field at some point in time as well.
Well, this is kind of a bigger picture question, but as you go through a season, as you're trying to evaluate things to get better at, how do you approach kind of judging coaches or evaluating how your coaches are going about their jobs? Just because I imagine it's tough for you to say, we need to fix this unit, that unit, trying to break it down into individual people.
The simplest thing I would say, I think always in evaluating myself or obviously other coaches, is do your guys, do the unit that you coach, do they play at, above, or below their God-given ability? And I don't know that you can always say that within 5 weeks or 5 games or 6 games. It's a bigger, broader evaluation, but it's not going to change, right? I'd be honest with you. I've had a year where we didn't run the ball very good at all, really poorly. And I remember the offensive line coach coming in and saying, I know we were very bad. We did a terrible job. I did a terrible job. And I'm like, no, actually, I evaluate you as doing a good job. For what you had and who we were, and we had 4 walk-ons starting on the offensive line, I thought they played at and above their ability almost every single week. And I think that's what ultimately as coaches we're evaluated on, right? I look at myself the same way. Does our team play at, above, or below their God-given abilities? And as guys are responsible for their units, that's where some of the things that you got to be able to do is be a good coach, be smart to say, hey, we got to do the things that I feel like my guys in particular can play at or above their ability. If we're asking them to do something that they really don't have the ability to do, it's tough to think that we're going to get them to play above their ability. So it's not something you sit here in the middle of a season and start to try to evaluate. But as a big picture, everybody knows that's how I think we evaluate everything within the program.
Luke, it sounds like they are going to have a little indecision at quarterback, Iowa, that is, with Gronkowski. It's unsure if he's going to be able to play. How does that affect you guys at all?
It doesn't. Obviously the quarterback changes the dynamics of some things. What does somebody else do that he doesn't do? So obviously it makes some little preparation things, but you don't know, right? So things that you can't control and you don't know, it's hard to say, hey, we're going to prepare differently. Now, there's going to be some adjustments that have to be made probably as you get into a game. That, hey, okay, if somebody else is in there and they're more of a dynamic runner, i.e. last year, then we got to make sure that we have some adjustments to the things that we need to be able to do. If this guy is a better thrower, i.e. whoever that is, okay, then we had to be able to make sure that within our game plan that we have some ability to make some adjustments. It happens. I would say with this team in particular that it's probably going to be, less of a change just the nature of what it is that they do really well, what it is that they want to do really well, and the history at which they've done it. And so there'll be some differences based on who that is, but I think those are sometimes going to have to be a little bit more of preparations and game adjustments.
Coach, with how the season has played out over the past few weeks, is it kind of nice having a game of, as you've emphasized, such importance in the middle of a season, kind of fighting for some hardware this building hasn't seen and this team hasn't seen since 2021?
It really is. I think that's, again, you can't draw things up the way you want them, and they don't always go the way you want them, but like in the situation of coming off of obviously 2 losses, to go into a rivalry game, to have a better chance to put those things behind you and understand this is something you've been talking about since last year, since January, all through the spring, all through fall camp. That's why I'm not worried about, okay, where are their minds? Are they still going to be lingering around about what happened on Saturday? The very immature ones and the ones that don't have the competitive spirit and understand the competitive maturity that we've been talking about since January probably aren't the ones hopefully that we're counting on. Otherwise, I think everybody understands, especially after the way it went last year, at what is at stake for us and what this game means.
Kind of going back to that 42-point game last year, obviously you got a different group. They have a different group. They're all American running backs in the NFL. But kind of where do you feel like this group has grown the most in this 11 months to be more prepared for a game like this?
I think it starts up front. I mean, if you really go down to it, I think it was 14-3 at half last year. And truth of the matter is, the second half, it was a complete dominance on their side, up front on both sides of the ball. I'm not saying they didn't, obviously dominate some version of it in the first half, but truly in the second half is where the game turned. And their ability to completely control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball was the difference. And, that's where we, knew we had to make some changes in January and find some ability to get bigger, to get more physical. Had a lot to do with that Saturday night. And so I think, obviously, we've shown we're in a better place. But it's still, the challenge is going to be different than any other challenge we've had. And that's what you're excited about.
Very good. Thanks, Coach.
Mark went?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You kind of last answer led to my next question. I was curious about Daryl Peterson. He's not a big stat guy, in terms of what
He's not a big stat guy, or he hasn't got big stats.
Correct. He has not gotten a lot of. He has not gotten a lot of.
Daryl Peterson is as competitive of a guy that I would tell you that if you asked, and I wouldn't tell you who's all playing at, above, or below their God-given ability, but if you ask me where Daryl Peterson is right now, I don't know that I could ask for a lot more out of anybody. He is playing with a competitive spirit. He's practicing with a competitive spirit. He might not have a whole bunch of stats. I don't know exactly what they are, but I would tell you that he's a guy that is playing above his God-given ability every single day. And that's what we got to continue to kind of say build around, because he's a senior, but build of what we're talking about this competitive spirit around guys like him that, that do have the competitive maturity that every single day they come out and they get better.